Om Maganati Marandasyanganana Sakaya Chaksurun Minitam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manavabhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Sayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shivishakan Vitam Stam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabara Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Durgamai Pati Mayandasya Skalapate Gehemaru Sakripaya Sanandanu Santu Santu Valambanam Mukam Gavit Pakariyan Sabarashanine Pangagilanga de Dekataragane Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kandara de Kantana Mostude Jayatam Surito Pango Mama Mater Matergati Matsarvasha Padambo Jaradana Numadan Mohanam Sriman Rasaram Vivam Sivada Karsan Benir Shanir Bako Gopinata Sri Sanam Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Sri Madratna Gada Shima Shanishto Sri Shirada Shira Govinda Deva Prasida Bihe Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmani Taya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Rajaja Mangalam Pariri Kaksho Mangalayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmihi Vasudevaya Dhimihi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmihi Vishnu Padnyate Dhimihi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastibhyam Sare Sri Hari Pare Namastibhyam Dare Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishavanusute Devi Pranamani Pare 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 Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Ramane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Praskita Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday. After having missed Motivational Monday this week, Motivational Monday last week, and Transcendental Tuesday and Wisdom Wednesday last week, we're finally back to you. And our absenteeism is manifesting here in terms of how many people are on board over on Facebook Live. But Rob, thank you for your patience. We're finally back on track here. How is everything this morning?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Everything is good. It's good to have you back and looking forward to the messages I'll receive today.
Last week, our excuse was that the Memorial Day weekend was so busy. We probably had a record day on Saturday I think Monday was the record day for a number of plates served. And the people that we have come in and help us, they also took the weekend off. So it was pretty much by Bobby and me managing the biggest weekend of the year and maintaining the buffet and the gift store. And there were a lot of volunteer groups, there were tour groups, so it was transcendentally crushing. Just like Krishna benedicted Bali by pushing him down with his foot. Krishna pushed us down on Labor Day weekend. And then my excuse for Monday, I don't really have an excuse for Monday, but just to bring you up to date on all the happenings, let me make sure we're starting to buffer here. So let me make sure we're on the right. Yeah, we're on the good Comcast line here with plenty of bandwidth. So I'm not sure why the buffering is happening, but nothing I can do about that. So I went to Salt Lake City on Saturday night to give the talk. Every other week I go to give the talk, and this was about discipline and controlling the senses. In fact, that was a talk I'd given the previous Sunday in Spanish Fork. But the laptop that I used to project the slides, and of course which has notes underneath it, died. It had a dark screen. Despite all of my best efforts, I couldn't bring that screen back to life. Then I was looking for a transcript that I could use as guidelines for the talk from the iPad. And I realized there was no transcript, that all the notes were, there was no separate transcript, all the notes were there in the presenter view of the slideshow. So the iPad was out, the laptop was out. Meanwhile, it's coming closer and closer to the time when I've got to get up there and present something intelligible and well planned out and compelling. the kirtan starts before my talk, and finally I found that I was able to open the slideshow with the notes on my phone. Of course, I didn't have the adapter to cast the slides onto the screen, and the notes were very tiny compared to the high fonts that you would get on your iPad or your laptop. These were tiny, tiny little fonts. But anyway, all this kind of came together literally seconds before 7:15, and I got up there, and I'm squinting and extracting what I need to know where to go and when to do it from these tiny little fonts on my phone on the podium. And I give the talk. Honestly, I never had such positive feedback from any talk. All the well-planned talks over the last 20 years, accompanied by slideshows, all pre-thought out, pre-prepared, well in advance, no last-minute crises. This was the most well-received talk I probably ever give. At least 6 to 8 to 10 people came up and said that they had loved the talk. It was what they needed to hear. And I said, well, if you'll excuse me, I'm not gonna go through this every week. If this is what it takes to have a over and above talk, I'm not gonna pay the price. It's too stressful. He said, I'm gonna continue to do everything I can to avoid having things going wrong, especially at the last minute. But if they do, it's nice to know that Kapil came up and he said, if you don't have preparation, experience will save the day. He says, if some or other your preparation is not there, there's a snafu, a malfunction, then experience will carry the day. So I gave a statistic in one of the talks a couple weeks ago that by a conservative estimate, I've given 10,000 talks on Krishna consciousness in the last 52 years. So I suppose Kapil's conclusion was authentic, that experience can be very, very helpful. Prabhupada said we should prepare our talks, but we should also be prepared to speak just from our realizations, stream of consciousness. And so last Saturday night was a little bit of both. Sunday, I went to lunch at the home in Harriman of Dibya Narayan and her husband Manoj, their daughter's Manya. There were a few other guests there, and we had a wonderful South Indian meal laid out on banana leaves. Very authentic, 12 or 14 different preparations with chutneys and papadums, all kinds of wonderful exotic tastes from South India. A couple are from Kerala, so it was a Kerala-style meal. I got a lot of historical background in Kerala, the origins of the people of Kerala, the history of Kerala, how Kerala fared during the Christian proselytations. It was a highly entertaining afternoon. Of course, Dibya Narayan's the one who so graciously brings her whole dance troupe to perform every Janmashtami at both temples. She not only does the Salt Lake Temple, which is an easy commute for her and her students, but they come down to Spanish Fork on the following day and do a wonderful program there. So we're always grateful to Dibya Narayan and her family and her students for helping to make each and every one of our Janmashtami successful. So now I'm in Salt Lake City, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and then Zach, who organizes the ecstatic dance programs in our Krishna auditorium every Wednesday night, has been encouraging me to come to this special program that he's booked for September 11th. It was Fateh Allah Qawwali group. It was touring America, and he had booked them, and with an introduction by Charles Eisenstein. To Charles Eisenstein, Charles Eisenstein gave an introductory talk. He told a couple of really, really engrossing stories to the accompaniment of a violinist whom they flew in all the way from Philadelphia. And then for 2 hours, from 7 till 9, the Qawwali group, Fateh Allah, played their devotional songs. I was going to look up Sufism before this talk, and I didn't quite have the time, maybe tomorrow. But I believe Sufism derived from the Bhakti, the Hindu Bhakti tradition in the Middle Ages. The Sufi Qawwali performers play the harmonium, they play the tabla, they sing devotional songs to Ali or Allah, which of course is a name for God. So there's a lot about it that reminds one of bhajans, bhakti songs. And in fact, I believe Sufism is derived or originated about the same time that bhakti was experiencing a renaissance in medieval India. Anyway, wonderful music. They had 6 males singing, and I assume 2 females dancing. I was on one side, so I could only see the one on the left side of the stage who was female. I couldn't see the one on the right side of the stage. And I'd seen, of course, the twirling, the Sufi twirling, dervishes, on videos, but I never saw it in person. It was amazing. The young lady, she started twirling, and this particular song that she was twirling to went on for a good 30 minutes. And she spun for 30 minutes without getting dizzy or losing her balance. And not only did she not appear to suffer from any sort of disorientation or vertigo, but you could see her hand gestures, her feet movements, and her facial expressions were going through various emotions prompted by the music, by the devotional music. Sometimes one hand would be low, one hand would be up. Sometimes both hands would be up, like we do when we raise our hands in kirtan. There would be various expressions of devotion and love on the face. It was quite stunning and really mesmerizing. You know, Lord Chaitanya, read about all Lord Chaitanya's symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, and you can't understand them. There's no ordinary physiological, anatomical, emotional, psychological explanation for the transformations that occurred in Lord Chaitanya's body while he was experiencing Mahabhav. So you see these people twirling, and you think, like, you know, you want to know about it from an anthropological, sociological, even religious point of view. What's the background? How did it start? And all like that. And it was really just something to be experienced. It was totally mystical to me. I was absolutely fixed on this dancer who was going around and around and around for a good 30 minutes. And I just thought that this practice of twirling came about as a result of the very advanced devotional level of a Sufi, of a saint, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And then it became, it spread, you know, other people picked up on it. And of course, not every practitioner has the same depth of realization as the person who originally did it. But the practice itself strikes one as being very meaningful in a way that you cannot really explain by logic and science. There's just something about the twirling that you know has its roots in Krishna Prem or Krishna Bhava. And that's one of the reasons why it's so mystical and so mesmerizing. I'm not sure the singers themselves were on a high level of realization because they had the audience in the palm of their hands. There were about 300 people there. And they got up and started dancing right in the beginning. The dancing was amazing. People were literally transported by the music and by the vocals. But during the rare intervals when the lead vocalist had a chance to share something with the audience. It was more about the technique. It was more about building the momentum. It was more about the nuts and bolts, but not. He didn't share any real philosophy. It was all based on feeling and sentiment, which is, of course, well and good. We need to nourish our sentiments. We need to direct our emotional life so that it's God-centered. But without philosophy to back it up, it's just going to be a fun night. It's not going to be something that people recognize should be part of a practice, which is taken up on a consistent daily basis. There's certainly purification. There's certainly the exposure to transcendence during the time of the music and the devotion, the upliftment. But there isn't anything in that which gives somebody something to do thereafter. A golden opportunity. The audience was literally eating out of the hands of the performers. When they finished, there was like standing ovation for 10 minutes. And they were throwing dollar bills on this. The whole stage was covered with dollar bills, which I'm told is customary in the Middle East. And I as a communicator, as a missionary, as a preacher, I would have died for the opportunity to say something about the difference between the soul and the body, about the soul being a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was all attractive because the audience was so receptive. Whatever you would have said, they would have accepted it lock, stock, and barrel. And yet that was an opportunity which was not seized. And I could only assume that there's the lack of the teacher. There's the lack of the guru there. Since one gets transcendental knowledge from the guru. Guru, in fact, means heavy, heavy with knowledge, just like a cloud is heavy with moisture. And after the dryness and the heat and everything being shriveled throughout the months of the season, when there's heat and no rain, when the rain clouds finally come and the monsoon clouds finally appear in the sky, people welcome them with great celebration and joy. Finally, the drought is at an end. So in this material world, we're in drought conditions. There's virtually no knowledge about God, his name, form, pastimes, qualities, and activities. And it was a delight. I thoroughly enjoyed and was engrossed in the chanting, the music, the dancing. It was wonderful. At the same time, because he didn't really come away with any more knowledge about the difference between the soul and the body, about all these essential points of knowledge, I could conclude that there is no disciplic succession. There's no transmission of transcendental knowledge throughout the ages. And that's not to say it's not there in Sufism, but I didn't detect the signs of that in this particular group. As expert and as inspiring, as an uplifting as they were, it seems that they're not part of any disciplic succession. And again, I'm not insisting on our disciplic succession. We have 4 bona fide Vaishnava disciplic successions. And, I don't know very much about Sufism, but Prabhupada used to say, if you have sentiment only without the philosophy, then it can become fanaticism. On the other hand, if you have philosophy without the sentiment, then it's just dry. You have to have a balance of sentiment and philosophy. So I found the sentiment was there. It was just magnificent. But at the same time, it's well and good to have a fire, but you need fuel for the fire. So what fuels our sentiment and keeps it directed in a constructive, uplifting, positive way is the knowledge which comes to us through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, scriptural knowledge, knowledge of great saints and sages, and knowledge of our particular Guru. Anyway, I won't belabor that point anymore. It was a fantastic evening, but it ended quite late, and I was loath to make the trip back to Spanish Fork, leaving Salt Lake City after 10 o'clock at night. And I could have done Motivational Monday with my laptop, except my laptop had died the day before. So that's my very elaborate, labyrinthian explanation of why we've had a hiatus. But I'm happy to be back here. We'll launch out and say what we can about our newest verse here, which is found in the next chapter, the 8th chapter of the first canto. It'll be the 19th verse. And this will be our first segment of discussing it. There's a lot there, and I anticipate that we'll be able to spend the rest of this week and probably next week as well on it. 19th verse of the 8th chapter, the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. With what time we have left here this morning, we'll begin our series of discussions. Maya Javani Kachanam Agana Dokshajam Avyayam Nalaksha Mudam Drisha Nato Nacha Daro Yata. Maya, we all know the term Maya. It's that which is not. Now, taking this material world, which is temporary, to be our home, is a symptom of our being in Maya, in a deluded condition of life. Now, into this material world, which can really steal away, it can really capture your consciousness and cause you to be in a permanent state of forgetfulness of your own eternal spirituality and of the spiritual world, which is your home from which you came. So into this deluding energy, this material energy, descends the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his original transcendental form. So this material was in itself like a curtain. And normally that curtain is all we can see. We, because of our absorption in matter and our preoccupation with sense gratification, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Sammudo Yam, we all are kind of relegated to the status of mudas, less intelligent living beings, because we take this superficial curtain of earth, air, fire, water, mind, intelligent, false ego to be all in all. And we ourselves as spirit souls are covered, our spirituality, our joy, our bliss, our peace is all covered and conditioned by this material energy. Shakat Brahma Bikarat Brahma Shantatam Britavir Lakshanam Yatatam Prakriti Param. In the third canto, it's explained by Uddhava that we are pristine, we are originally pure, just like a raindrop. But when that raindrop descends from the heavens and hits the ground, then its purity becomes compromised. It mixes with earth, and as a result, there's mud. So into this material world we become entangled, we become deluded by the material energy, and out of kindness and mercy, the Lord, who is a dokshada, who has really nothing to do with matter, he only creates this material world as a concession to our desires. This material world is not the preferred creation, the highest creation of the Lord. It's not that creation of which he's most proud. In fact, he's pretty neutral. It's the creation of which we're proud, but God is. It's in the previous series of discussions, the verse said, this material energy is castaway energy. It's like if you have a fire, smoke is the least useful. You may have sparks, and sparks can be useful. You have flames, and flames can certainly be useful for cooking and heating. But the smoke, it's just an annoyance. It just we wish we could have the fire, the useful things, the sparks and the flame, without the smoke. But unfortunately, the smoke is there as one of the castaway energies of the fire. So this material world is like smoke, and it's not God's highest creation of which he's the most proud. And yet that Adoksha, that Lord who lives beyond the curtain of the material energy and who himself is Avyayam, infallible, and in fact never falls. God never is at any point overcome by his material energies. Those energies are temporary and inferior. God is the omnipotent controller of all energies. And so when he comes into this material world, he comes on a mission of mercy. He comes by his own sweet will, not conditioned by, not forced by the material energies. Now, the foolish observer, seeing Krishna appear in time and place as a historical personality, may wrongly conclude that Krishna is also just like us. He's just like us. We're actors on the stage, and here's another actor that comes in from the wings, and he may be playing a key role. He may be a protagonist, a hero. He may be the most handsome, the most beautiful. He may speak the most intelligently, but the superficial observer will think of him as just another ordinary person dressed up to play his role on the stage and who has practiced his lines, which are themselves stimulating, poetic, etc., etc., etc. However, it's explained by this verse that the Lord has nothing to do with his material creation. He appears on stage amongst us in a human-like form and acts as a human being, but that's only a superficial conclusion. All we have to do is look a little bit below the surface, and the spiritual master is the one who will lift up or who will part that curtain so that we can see the transcendent Lord beyond the material illusion. The Lord never exists within our limited range of sense perception. He is the eternally, Prabhupada calls him, irreproachable. In that word is approach. You cannot approach the Lord with mundane scholarships, with yogic powers, with any amount of bank balance, good looks, aristocratic birth, connections. The Lord remains beyond the reach of those who are materially successful and proud of their material success. There's always a curtain between them and the Lord. The Lord is always invisible to the foolish, superficial observer who has not had the benefit of tutelage under the bona fide lotus feet of a spiritual master. So therefore the Lord, as an actor on the stage, is not recognized as coming down from a different dimension altogether. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, 11th verse in the 9th chapter. Avijananti mam mudha manasim tanamasrita parambhavo ananjanto mama bhuta maheshanam avijananti mam mudha. He describes those people who take him as an ordinary man because he's appeared in a human-like form, manashanim tanum, a form like a human being. They do not recognize that this human-like apparition, this manifestation of human-like power, beauty, opulence, wealth, wisdom, and humility does not have matter as his origin. Rather, the opposite, that both the material and the spiritual worlds emanate from him, and because everything emanates from him, natasha karanam janan natachama, but there is none equal to or greater than him. Param bhavam ajana. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme destination of all living beings. But of these facts, superficial observers, non-devotees, those without the benefit of a spiritual master, people remain ajanato, ignorant of the transcendental nature of the Lord and of his supreme dominion of all that be. Not only do they remain ignorant, but in their ignorance, they deride the Lord. They make fun of the Lord, and they make fun of the Lord's devotees. Not a very healthy practice to take up. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, when the sages headed by Sanaka Rishi inquired about the activities of Krishna to Sukadeva Goswami, they said, Kritavan Kilakarmani. Kritavan Kilakamani. What acts did Krishna do? Saha Ramena Keshava. Keshava is Krishna and Ramena is Balaram. So Saha, the two of them together, Krishna and Balaram, having manifested themselves within this material cosmic manifestation, Kila Kritavan Karmani, what activities did they perform which were Bhagavan Guda Kapata? Superficially, they looked like two brothers who appeared in a rural village of Vrindavan, herding the cows, having friends, playing games with the local females, the gopis, which go on in every rural village in the world since time immemorial. And yet, the key to this, the key to unlocking the meaning of this verse is Acha Marchani Bhagavan Guda Kapata Manishana. While they were playing the role of ordinary human beings, what were their activities? And if one analyzes through the lenses of pure devotee of the Lord, the activities of the Lord, therein one will find the difference between the Lord and an ordinary human being. Janma karma me divyam. Krishna says, my birth and my activities are divyam. Evam yoveti tatvara. So if you actually, not just superficially or just as light, casual reading, but you study Janma karma, the activities and the birth of Krishna, you will conclude that they are the furthest thing from ordinary. That these activities, this form of the Lord and his brother Balaram, masked superhuman acts. You cannot study under the proper guidance the activities and pastimes of Krishna and come to the conclusion that he is an ordinary man. You simply cannot do that unless you're not guided at all by anyone with transcendental vision. The simple fact of the matter is that if you scratch the surface, no human being or even demigod could perform the urukrama, the wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on the earth. Just think of from the very day of his appearance in the prison house of Kamsa at the midnight hour, he appeared before his mother and father, Devaki and Vasudeva, with 4 arms, with the conch, the club, the disc, and the mace, with the crown and all the trappings of God Almighty. This reminds us of the Old Testament God before whom your knees tremble and you cower and you're afraid of doing something wrong, making a misstep in his presence. He strikes fear, he intimidates you. This is how Krishna appeared in the prison house of Kamsa before Vasudeva and Devaki until they asked him to transform himself into his original two-handed form. That same Krishna, at the tender age of around 7 years old, when Indra, the king of the heavenly planet, sent an inundation, a torrential rainfall, a little hurricane. It was a storm the like of which we never see during the normal manifestation of the cosmic creation. This was the same storm that's invoked at the annihilation of the cosmic manifestation. You can imagine, it was freezing cold. There weren't just raindrops, there weren't just hailstones, there was all of that, but the water was coming down in pillars within minutes. You could have a stopwatch. The water was rising to ankles, to the knee, to the thighs. And what did everyone in Vrindavan, who are all devotees of Krishna, do when they saw themselves challenged in a way that they had no solution to it in of themselves? They threw up their hands and they said, Krishna, Krishna, save us. Krishna's first thought was he would just kill Indra. You remove the cause and then the effect will dry up. So he thought, I'll just destroy Indra in his heavenly kingdom and then the rain will have no origins. But then he thought, Indra is so insignificant. Why kill a canary with a howitzer? Well, his second plan B was he lifted up Govardhan Hill. Right now, today, it said Govardhan Hill has been shrinking since the time Krishna was on the planet 5,000 years ago. But what it is today, it's 25 kilometers or 15 miles to walk around Govardhan Hill, to do the Govardhan Parika. We don't know what it was in those days. It was considerably bigger. But no, not even though it shrunk to only 25 miles, 15 miles in diameter. It's not something that you and I could lift on the finger of our left hand. So Krishna just picked up this hill, and it said he picked it up like a child picks up a frog's umbrella. What's a frog's umbrella? When it's raining and a frog wants to get out of the rain, he can't go to the store and buy an umbrella. But there are such things called frog's umbrella in nature. And what do you think they would be? Yeah, a mushroom. Frogs. During a rainfall in the forest, you'll see the frog underneath the mushroom getting protection from the downpour. So Krishna picked up this mountain, which was several times bigger in those days than it is today, with the little finger of his left hand. Not only that, he didn't just pick it up and put it down. You look at these Olympic weightlifters, these power lifters, they lean over. There's the big bar with the plates, who knows how many plates. And they hyperventilate. They take several deep breaths. They bend their knees. And with a big roar. And a lot of it is physics. A lot of it is, it's actually balancing. It's strength, but it's also balance. They pick it up and they get it like this. And then they raise it up and all the time grunting. You think of Atlas with the globe on his shoulders, bending under the weight. They raise it. And then as soon as they get it up and they've achieved the lift, the dead weight lift, they immediately walk back. They get out of the way. They step back and comes down and bounces to the floor. Krishna didn't just lift the mountain for a second and then let it drop. If he had, he would have crushed the cows, the gopis and the gopas and the adults of Vrindavan. Of course, Krishna would never let that happen. So the rain continued. And Krishna wanted to show his power. He wanted to show that there's no limits to what Krishna will do to protect his devotees. And so for 7 days, 7 nights, I don't know how many hours that is, 24 times 7. He didn't just pick it up for a second. There was that movie about the soldier interred in the Japanese prison camp. It's called Unshakable or Unbreakable or something like that. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. It was a very popular movie. And then, of course, the promotional materials show this guy. He's probably 140 pounds. He's in the concentration camp, so he's not getting very good nutrition. But this one Japanese guard is persecuting him, and he has to hold a log above his head. And he held it for a half an hour, which was pretty amazing. But Krishna held that mountain on the tip of his little finger of his left hand for 24 hours a day for 7 days. Until Indra realized, he was on thin ice, called a halt, told the clouds to go back to wherever they were warehoused, came down and prostrated himself before Krishna. Now, who does the king of the heavenly planets, the lord of rainfall, the wielder of the thunderbolt, and he's bowing down, trembling, fearing he's displeased this 7-year-old boy. So who is this 7-year-old boy? Do you really think he's an ordinary person? Or can you begin to understand Param Bhavma Janato? He is the Lord of all creatures. He is all-powerful and omnipotent. And this is confirmed by Queen Kunti in her prayers. She says, when the Lord appears amongst us in his various incarnations, Ramadi, Murtishu, Nanaka, Mananishnan, none of them act ordinarily. Nrsimha appeared wonderfully as a half-man, half-lion incarnation. Rama, although he was voluntarily restricting himself to the activities of an ordinary man because of the wording of the boon that Ravan had received, still Rama's divinity comes through. He caused rocks to float. Who does that? What ordinary man can order rocks to float and build a bridge 800 miles long? Rama at one point shot an arrow through 7 palm trees. Who can do that? Palm trees are like iron. You can't even shoot an arrow through 1 palm tree. You can't even get it to stick. It'll just hit and bounce off. But he shot it through 7 palm trees. He lifted the bow of Lord Shiva. Every warrior who was on the planet at that time, contemporary with Ram, tried to lift that bow, and they couldn't even get it off of its dais. They got hernias. They got slip discs, these huge, powerful warriors of the previous ages. When they tried to even just lift the bow of Lord Shiva during the Swayamvar of Sita. But Ram came as a 16-year-old boy, wet behind the ears, you might say, walked in amongst all these kings. They're looking down their noses. Who is this kid? Who does he think he is? How will he be able to do what we were unable to do? And then just as easy as you could possibly think, Ram picked up the bow with one hand. He bent it. He went to string it. And in the course of stringing it, he broke the bow. The bow snapped. And the sound of that bow snapping was like the loudest thunderclap. The warriors themselves put their hands over their ears. They thought their eardrums were, and they all fell down. They were disempowered simply by the sound of that bow cracking. And you want to tell me that Krishna and Rama are ordinary persons? Janma karma me divyam. Just study it properly. Study it under the right guidance. One more example for today. When Krishna was a little baby, not even walking, still in the stage where he's crawling from here to there, Kamsa sent a superhuman, malicious witch named Putana. Her breasts had been smeared with poison, and she was meant to kill the Lord. She'd killed many, many babies this way. She would pick the babies up. She would transform herself into a beautiful form. She'd pick babies up, and then with the first taste of her breasts, they would die, being overwhelmed by a poison that was virulent enough to kill 10,000 elephants. Well, Krishna, when he was picked up by Putana, put to her breast, he began sucking. And not only did he not die, but he continued sucking. Putana was expecting him to turn blue and start to hyperventilate at any moment. But he just eagerly kept on sucking and sucking. He sucked the milk, and then he sucked the poison, and then he continued to suck out the very life air of Putana herself. And she said, "Leave me, child, leave me, leave me." And she was trying to pry him off of her breast, but he was latched in such a way that, as powerful as she was, she couldn't get him off of her breast until her life air had exited her body. And when she fell down, Krishna book, I think, describes she was lying 9 miles long. Her corpse provided like a Disney World for the cowherd boys for months and months afterwards. They would go in and out her nostrils. They would play on her belly. They would climb her hips like you'd climb mountains. They would do bungee jumping, you know. And this huge demon, who was 9 miles long and had killed thousands and thousands of babies, was very easily killed by little tiny Krishna, who was exhibiting his pastimes in a form that he couldn't even walk. He couldn't even walk. So you could say on the one hand, oh, Krishna was just a baby. He can't. How is this God? He can't even walk. But on the other hand, consider what the great saints and sages and commentators have explained to us, that Krishna wasn't walking, but that wasn't by force. That was because he was capturing the love of his devotees. They were enjoying his antics as he was crawling from here to there. So not that God can't walk, but that he was choosing as an actor to play a role to capture and enchant his surrendered devotees. But that child who, quote unquote, couldn't walk, when a 9-mile high demoness full of the black arts came, that little child who didn't walk sucked out her very life and caused her to fall crashing down on the ground. So these are just a few examples of the superhuman activities of the Lord as described, not in folklore, not in fancy, not by whimsical paid bards and singers, but these are described in the original authoritative Vedic literatures like the Puranas, the Itihasas, and the Upanishads. Then they're passed down in a bona fide, authentic way through the ages by the saints and bards, and most especially if you want to understand the essence of these stories, and you want to understand Krishna in truth, the result of which is that leaving this present body, you will not have to take birth again. Then you need to learn all these things under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Thanks very much for those few of you who have rejoined us for Transcendental Tuesday. Anjali, appreciate your being with us. Sentiment, knowledge versus sentiment within the Sufi experience. Yes, we speculated on that. I don't know much about Sufism, but you judge a tree by its fruits. There's a link to the Veda base that Anjali has given us here. Bhai Bobby is on board. Sundari Priya, thank you for joining us. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We have the few Manasa Ganga this morning, and it's all my fault for having been absent for a few times. But anyway, I would come and speak no matter whether there was 100 people or 2 people, because it's just so purifying to be able to glorify the Lord. Rob, do you have any pithy phrases for us as a result of this morning's session?
Hey, Krishna Prabhuji, it was wonderful to start the morning with your class today. I did write down a couple of things. Guru relieves the spiritual drought.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hashtag this with these. Okay, got it.
Fuel the bhakti fire.
Yes. Okay.
Maya steals consciousness and brings forgetfulness.
Maya, that's a long one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll write that in shorthand. All right. By the way, what episode of Wisdom of the Sages are you up to now?
750s, 760s, something like that.
Wow, you've heard every one of 760 episodes of Wisdom of the Sages?
Yes.
And how many are they up to now?
They're in the 800s now, I believe.
Rob is systematic. So he's listening to every single episode. He's not like jumping forward, jumping back. He's listening one after another. So he's listening to 760 consecutive episodes of Wisdom of Sages, and they do one a day or at least 6 a week. So for you to catch up, you're going to have some double header days or triple header days, right? Or
yes, that's when it finished to work.
Yeah, or don't catch up. Just always remain at least so that the dust of their lotus feet is up ahead of you.
Yes.
Eventually, though, there may have been millions of episodes in the past, and there may be millions of episodes in the future. So we're just trying to taste a small drop of the ocean of the nectar of devotion. 760 episodes of Wisdom of the Sages. I know you've been listening to me probably at least, couple hundred times?
I'm not entirely sure, but for almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years soon.
Yeah, 3 times, 150 times a year. So that would be like almost 450, almost 500 segments of this too, and you've rarely missed that. So, and all of this, my point is, all of this is, I don't feel like I'm doing anything but just tasting a tiny drop of the ocean of devotion. And am I right? I'm sure you feel the same way, isn't it?
Yes, it's yes, it's a tiny drop, but it's still so much more than I had previously that it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
But not satisfying enough to stop.
This is not a body of knowledge that you ever master. Even the great saints like Rupa and Shiva Goswami, they're always finding more and more and more and churning, and it'll go on eternally because it's transcendental, limitless. So we'll never not have anything to do in the devotional culture of bhakti. Just the opposite. There'll be millions of more things to do, millions of more things to learn than we could possibly do in any one lifetime, or hundreds of lifetimes for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did have 2 more if you want them.
Okay, fire away. Shorter the better. Just shorter the better.
When smoke lifts, perspective shifts.
Oh, that's good. Smoke lifts, perspective shifts. All right. And what was the other one?
The other one's a little bit longer. You can do with it what you like. But smoke, spark, and flame, all the same. When an illusion, smoke is to blame.
That is so great. Maybe you could just text that to me.
Okay.
All right. That was good. I do want to use that, but like you said, it'll take quite a while to write it down. So if you get a chance, text that over to me. Well, thanks, Rob, for being staunch, and thanks for being patient. We missed 4 sessions, but we're back on track now. And thanks to Anjali, thanks to Bhai Bobby, thanks to Sundari Priya, thanks to Manasa Ganga, all of you for taking time out of your business day to help us relish the in depth, in truth, the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities. We'll be back tomorrow with more nectar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare.